you remain deep within the cool, quiet hollow of your dwelling. The last stirrings of the deepest night have passed, and now there is only a slow, deliberate shifting in the air outside. You do not wake suddenly, but rather by the gradual accumulation of subtle changes, a barely perceptible thinning of the gloom that clings to the eaves, perhaps, or the faint scent that shifts from pure cold earth to something warmer, like distant wood smoke mixing with damp soil. This waking is not marked by a bell or a trumpet call. It arrives quietly, folded into the texture of the darkness itself. You shift your weight beneath the rough, woven covers and notice the coolness penetrating through the coarse wool. The blanket feels reassuringly heavy, yet insufficient against the persistent chill that clings to the stones of the hut. You draw your awareness outwards, though your body remains still for a few more moments. If you listen very carefully, you can distinguish various sounds, not loud ones, but those absorbed by the early morning dampness. There is the occasional soft clatter from outside, perhaps an animal moving against a stone threshold, maybe the rhythmic scraping sound of a neighbor preparing something small and rough. These noises are not sudden bursts of noise, but rather elements woven into the existing quietude, like the faint threads in a thick tapestry. The air itself seems to possess different qualities now. In the deepest hours, it was absolute cold, carrying only the damp chill of unlit ground. Now, there is an undertone, a growing promise. You detect the mingled smells, the deep, musky scent of wet peat and decaying leaves beneath the path, overlaid with something sharper, sweeter, and very promising. The first gentle fragrance of smoke rising from a chimney not far away. This wood smoke speaks of embers being carefully tended, of morning chores already beginning their quiet orbit around the village. You finally slide your legs out from under the coverings. The wooden floorboards beneath your feet are shockingly cool, forcing you to pause and register that temperature through the soles of your bare feet. You feel the faint roughness of the oiled wood grain against your skin. Every movement requires a conscious effort, not due to fatigue, but because the entire environment seems imbued with this profound, sleepy stillness. This physical awareness grounds you in the moment, separating it from the day before or the potential concerns of the day after. You move slowly toward the mouth of the dwelling and pause there, allowing your eyes a few moments to adjust from the deep shadows within to the filtered light outside. The dawn is not yet visible as a clear line across the sky. Rather, it is suggested by a deepening gradient in the eastern hemisphere, an expanse that goes from velvety black overhead to a bruised, slate-gray tone near the horizon. This muted palette sets a slow, meditative rhythm for the awakening. You take a careful, deep breath of the cold air. It tastes clean and mineral, like water run over raw river stones. As you stand there, observing the gradual rise of light and the small movements of the world waking up around you, you feel the weight of routine settling upon you, not as a burden, but as a gentle promise. This rhythm is cyclical. It has marked countless sunrises for this village, providing structure not through force, but through shared understanding. You observe how the neighbor's first cow is being let out, its lowing sound deep and resigned, perfectly pitched against the rising hush of the community. The necessity of the day's labor begins to build softly in your chest, a gentle urging rather than a forceful command. It has nothing to do with ambition or urgency. It simply aligns with the established rhythm of existence here. You note the meticulous way some hands are already at work, tying knots on bundles of reeds outside an outer wall, sweeping stray dust from a cobbled path that must remain passable for the morning's activity. These small acts demonstrate the communal commitment to order, the belief that if each individual maintains their corner of the world, the whole structure endures. As you begin your own slow journey through the immediate yard, brushing past stacked baskets and tools left outside, you notice details that are often overlooked when one is hurried. The specific pattern in which moss grows back into the deep crevices between two stepping stones, the way a single wild blue flower manages to bloom defiantly near the rutted edge of the path, where nothing else seems able to thrive. These small points of tenacious life offer a quiet study in resilience, mirroring perhaps the required steady hand for the day's work ahead. Every object here tells a story of use and endurance. The plowshare leaning against the wall, its iron tip darkened with oxidation, but still bearing promise. The wooden bucket, worn smooth by decades of water carrying. These items are not mere tools. They are artifacts of persistent human interaction with the world. They require respect, a mindful acknowledgement of their function and history before they can be entrusted to you again. You touch the cool handle of one such implement, feeling the grain beneath your fingertips, a tangible connection to hands that held this very object long ago. The early hours compel patience. There is no need for haste. If you walk slowly now, concentrating on the way the emerging light catches the moisture on the thatch roof tiles, or the intricate arrangement of dried herbs hanging from an outer beam, time itself seems to stretch out into a luxurious, unhurried canvas. You breathe deeply, feeling the slight warmth building in your lungs as the air becomes marginally less biting with every passing minute. There is a profound sense of peace that accompanies this slow awakening, a quiet recognition of your place within an enduring system. The labor waiting for you today, the turning of the soil, the gathering of wood, the care for livestock, is not viewed as endless toil, but as necessary participation in something vast and predictable, something tied to the lifeblood of the land itself. This sense of inherent belonging is perhaps the greatest comfort found at this quiet beginning. The faint aroma of burning smoke gradually strengthens, suggesting that the core activity of the village center is rousing. You might see a few figures emerging from their own dwellings now. An older woman carrying a wooden yoke across her shoulders. A younger man with his arms already dusted lightly with soil from the previous day's work. They move with an unhurried economy of motion, each bearing their necessary equipment and moving toward a purpose that is understood without needing elaborate conversation. Their movements are steeped in the accumulated knowledge of generations, a graceful participation in the eternal rhythm of the season. The morning light has barely stirred, a thin, milky wash of gray spilling through the cracks in your cottage wall. You move with the unhurried grace that only necessity can teach you, rising from the bedding. The air retains the deep chill of the night, smelling faintly of smoke and wet earth. This small coolness settles on your skin as you pull on your rough-spun tunic, noting how the wool has softened over years of wear. There is no rush here. The clock of this life beats with the slow, dependable rhythm of sunrise and planting. You leave the warmth of the dwelling, stepping out into the semi-darkness of the courtyard. The first visible signs of life are subtle. A wisp of wood smoke curling up from a chimney across the narrow way, carrying the scent of smoldering peat, the clucking of chickens in an unseen yard. You walk towards your corner of the shed where your tools are hung, observing how they rest against the damp timber walls. There is a pleasing arrangement to it, born not of aesthetics, but of simple function. The wooden handle of your hoe rests beside the heavier farming implements, each tool placed precisely by those who used them before you. Picking up the plowshare requires a focused movement, drawing on muscle memory that feels as natural as breathing. You notice the patina on the iron blade, a rich, dark oxide formed over countless cycles of turning soil. It is not brand new, yet it holds an undeniable sharpness, the potential energy of useful work. Next, you turn to the smaller implements, a sickle with a wooden handle and a digging fork meant for root vegetables. Running your thumb along the edge of the sickle blade, you feel the slight unevenness where the metal meets the wood. It is imperfect, as all things crafted by hand are, yet this imperfection speaks to its history, to the hands that sharpened it before you. You take a piece of coarse sandstone, traditionally used for honing edges, and begin the rhythmic work. The gritty whisper of stone against cold iron becomes the dominant sound in the quiet courtyard. It is not a loud noise, but an insistent, methodical friction, a gentle conversation between two hard materials. As you sharpen the edge, your attention narrows entirely to this small circle of activity. You watch the fine dust rise from the blade and settle again, illuminated momentarily by that weak pre-dawn light. This act of sharpening is more than mere preparation. It is a focused centering. It requires you to slow your mind down until every motion is deliberate, every breath measured against the steady grit. Your muscles engage in controlled repetition, building a quiet concentration. You observe the changing character of the metal, gradually losing any dullness and gaining a clean, hungry edge. Then you move to another piece of equipment, perhaps a wicker basket meant for carrying gathered herbs or small roots. The weave is worn, showing patches where the tough plant fibers have frayed and softened with age. You find a thin length of tough twine and begin the painstaking process of mending a tear in the side. Your fingers navigate the tight spaces, pushing the new fiber through the old structure, making sure the tension is equal on both sides. It demands an entirely different kind of attention than the sharpening of metal, a softer, more structural patience. You feel the yielding texture of the natural plant fibers beneath your fingertips, contrasting sharply with the hard coldness of the iron. Observing this mend, you are forced to contemplate the concept of continuity, not just in time, but in matter itself. The basket was woven before you. It has been repaired countless times by others, and now you mend it, ensuring that its useful life continues for another day. This simple act makes you consider how much value is placed on things that endure through repair rather than replacement. It speaks to a deep practicality, an understanding of finite resources in the harsh rhythm of rural living. You pause from the mending, your gaze drifting over the collection of tools, the various spades, the oily axes, the baskets filled with loose straw for reinforcement. Each object is marked by its history. A crook handle smoothed into an ergonomic curve by generations of gripping. A patch on the leather strap where countless weights have been shifted. You run your palm along the rough wood of the spade's shaft, feeling the tiny, ingrained splinters and the coolness that penetrates the surface. The weight itself settles in your hand, feeling balanced and ready. This quiet time spent with tools is a form of internal preparation, an acknowledgement that nothing you do today can happen without the steady functioning of these simple extensions of yourself. You are preparing not just iron and wood, but also your own mind, sharpening its focus alongside the implements. The very act of perfecting the tools creates a profound sense of readiness by ensuring that every point makes clean contact with the earth, whether it is the edge of the plowshare or the tip of the sickle. You are assuring yourself of efficacy for the day ahead. It is a quiet ceremony, this preparation, grounded entirely in observation and mindful action. You finally lay down the tools, wiping away the fine dust from the blade and letting your hands rest for a moment. The scent now is an amalgamation, the metallic tang of freshly sharpened iron mixing with the sweeter, earthy smell of wet wood and drying plant matter. A quiet calm settles over you, mirroring the muted light that still hangs in the air. You notice how the temperature remains crisp, promising a day of physical exertion, but also holding within it the faint promise of warmth to come. This sense of methodical preparation gives your movements a contained gravity as you turn away from the shed, readying yourself for the next necessary rhythm. Stepping out into the unfolding light and the community's awakening presence, the sun has climbed higher now, burning off the deep blue chill of morning. You walk out from your dwelling and onto the communal ground where the cultivated earth awaits. The air feels different here. It is warmed by the slow action of light hitting the dew-soaked stalks and dampened soil. Your pace settles into a quiet rhythm, one that matches the natural swing of your own gait. This field does not hurry, for the fields have always been this way. You begin your day among rows of planted seeds, examining the soil as if it were an old friend whose moods you are learning to understand. The earth under your nails is cool and firm, carrying a distinct, rich smell, a mix of turned loam, crushed leaf matter, and honest effort. This scent has been the backdrop to your life, the constant measure of time itself. You walk slowly, placing your feet carefully where you step, noting how the soil yields slightly beneath your worn boots. You pause near a patch that another family has worked, observing their method. Their hands move with an efficiency born of repetition. They know exactly where to press and where to pull. Their focus is entirely downward, directed at the interplay between tool and ground. You realize that this careful attention is not just about harvesting crops. It is about listening to the earth itself. The way the soil texture changes from rich black loam near the feeder stream to drier, reddish clay further up the gentle slope teaches you volumes simply by observation. When you reach a section planted with young grain stalks, you crouch down, allowing your fingers to sift through the earth. You feel for stones or clumps of harder earth that might impede growth. These small obstacles require nothing more than patience and careful withdrawal. It is an act of miniature archaeology, removing what does not belong so that life may thrive where it should. The tactile experience is deeply grounding. You are acutely aware of the temperature variations, the coolness of the damp clay against your palms, the dry roughness of a splintered root, the silky smoothness of passing moss on a stable stone. You spend time tracing patterns in the soil with your fingertips. Sometimes you push just gently enough to loosen the topmost layer, making small furrows that speak only to the immediate moment. These tracks are invisible an hour later, washed away by morning dew or covered by subsequent plantings. Yet they hold the memory of careful human consideration. You think about the continuity of this work, the planting in spring, the tending through summer rains, and finally, the harvest when you will lift up what has been nurtured so faithfully over months. This cyclical process anchors your entire sense of self. It is the measure of virtue and necessity. The soundscape here shifts as you move deeper into the fields. It is not a loud chorus, but rather a tapestry woven from subtle noises. The soft rasp of dry stalks brushing against each other in a slight breeze, the occasional bird call echoing off the distant woods, the gentle scuffing sound of your own movements over prepared ground. These quiet sounds demand that you listen with all parts of yourself. They remind you that even in this seemingly contained world of human effort and agricultural planning, wildness remains at the edges. You find a spot where an ancient oak tree stands sentinel at the edge of the field. Its roots spread out like petrified river fingers across the hard ground. You observe how the cultivated order gives way abruptly to the random chaos of nature here. The bark on the old wood is deeply furrowed, etched by centuries of weather and slow growth. When you run your hand over it, the texture feels rugged, almost abrasive, yet undeniably solid. This tree has witnessed countless cycles of planting and harvest. Its existence seems a quiet commentary on resilience. Your body begins to settle into the rhythm of labor that is both physical and mental. Lifting, crouching, walking, each movement flows naturally from the previous one. You are not performing work for reward or acclaim. You are doing it because the earth demands it, and humanity relies upon its cycle. This recognition creates a profound sense of belonging, a place within something much larger than your own lifespan. The simple necessity of sustaining the community is a deep form of meditation. The midday sun climbs overhead, shifting the light to a sharp, high angle that washes out some of the softer colors and emphasizes lines, the straight rows of planted seed, the uneven cracks in the dried earth, the stark shadows cast by clumps of grass. The heat arrives subtly, warming through your clothing and settling on your exposed skin, demanding slow adjustment. You take a deep breath, inhaling the heavy aroma of sun-baked soil mixed with dust, and the faint, sweet scent of nearby wild herbs that have flourished at the field's border. You pause for a moment, kneeling back in the prepared ground. Your fingers trace the lines left by previous plows, imagining the great effort that must have preceded this quiet day of tending. The work was heavy, requiring coordinated muscle and deep knowledge of the turning seasons. To be part of this cycle, to contribute your sweat and attention, is to understand your own small, essential role within a monumental pattern. You watch a small beetle trudge across a loose piece of clay, its struggle seemingly effortless and inevitable, mirroring the persistence required in cultivating life itself. The time spent here forces a slowing down of internal thought. The worries that might crowd your mind at other times, the coming winter, the harvest yield, the matters within the cottage walls, all recede slightly, subsumed by the immediate task at hand. All that exists is the ground beneath you, the tools in your hands, and the cyclical promise held within every newly sprouted seed. This physical connection to the source of life becomes a profound grounding force, teaching you that true wellness is not found through escape or dramatic change, but through enduring, rhythmic participation in the natural order. The air here feels different than the dense, earthy smells of the fields. It carries a clean chill that reminds you immediately where you stand, at the edge of something necessary and shared. The sun has yet to fully climb, but its pale promise is evident in the way the mist clings low to the ground, surrounding the structure of the well itself. You walk slowly towards it, your steps cushioned by trampled grass and scattered stones that have been worn smooth by centuries of use. As you draw closer, the sounds change. The muted clamor of farm life fades slightly, replaced by a deeper silence, punctuated only by the occasional creak of wood or the drip of water from overhead eaves. You pause just before the stone lip of the wellhead, letting your eyes adjust to the cool, diffuse light filtering through the neighboring roofs. It is more than just a hole in the ground. It is the central artery of this small cluster of homes. The surrounding stones are darker here, stained by time and water, possessing a rich patina that tells stories of countless hands descending into its depths. You notice how some of the coping stones have been carefully fitted, mortared together, with an almost deliberate effort to last through harsh winters and hot summers alike. It speaks to a shared understanding of permanence. You reach out, your fingers tracing the cool, rough edge of the stone rim. The texture is slightly porous, giving away microscopic details of age. This well has sustained generations. It has given enough life to grow seeds in the soil surrounding it, and it has filled bellies at times when the harvest was scarce. Linger here for a moment, simply absorbing the weight of its existence. The bucket hanging near the hoist feels substantial, its wooden handle worn smooth by oil and friction. You feel the faint coolness radiating off the wet stones around the base. This necessity draws you into an ancient rhythm, the quiet cooperation required to draw life from deep within the earth's cool heart. You settle beside the wellhead, watching another neighbor approach. They carry an empty, woven pail and move with that characteristic morning economy of motion, efficient without seeming hurried. The greeting exchanged is brief, a simple nod, or a murmured word about the chill in the air. There is no need for elaborate conversation. The shared task itself creates the connection. When it is your turn, you take your empty bucket. The weight of anticipation, not labor, settles on your shoulders as you wait. You slide the sturdy rope over the mechanism and begin to haul down. The descent of the bucket is met with a soft creak of wood against stone, a sound that repeats itself in a soothing, predictable cadence. The journey downward seems endless, drawing your attention only to the rhythm of the hoisting, the steady pull back, the gentle resistance met by the rope's tension. When the bucket finally reaches the water, you hear the unmistakable sound, a clean, resonant slosh, followed by the gradual settling noise as the bulk liquid moves around its form. Hauling it back up is different. Now the weight is genuine. You grip the rough rope, feeling the slight scrape of your palms against the fibers. Slowly, steadily, you lift the bucket, the contents a dark, cool jade color that catches the growing light. The cold immediately rises, kissing your exposed skin, a sudden contrast to the mild chill of the surrounding air. You carry the bucket back across the short stretch of path to the rinsing basin, or simply up the slight incline toward the nearest dwelling. As you move, you notice details you would have missed while focused only on the lift. The splash where a child dropped a stone earlier in the week, the small clusters of tenacious weeds pushing through cracks in the paving stones, the way the steam from an early cooking fire drifts faintly past your side. The shared act of drawing water is always accompanied by necessary conversation. You might pause near the basin, watching the clean flow into a wooden trough, and exchange news about the soil or the coming weather with the neighbor who arrived before you. These moments are gentle interjections into the rhythm, a brief accounting of your lives that reaffirms your place within the collective. You watch the water move. Its surface is slightly oily in places, reflecting the pale gray sky, yet inherently pure and necessary. Its scent is purely mineral, cold and clean. The act concludes not with triumph, but with a quiet satisfaction of utility. The buckets are emptied into their designated place, the rope coiled neatly beside the wellhead, ready for the next cycle. You stand back, taking in the scene, the clustered homes awakening around this shared source of life. You feel the profound stillness that settles over you, realizing that much of your physical existence, your survival, your capacity to labor in the fields hours away, depends upon this simple, reliable presence. This routine becomes a quiet meditation on interdependence. Nothing works alone here. The roof relies on the skill of the carpenter. The plowshare relies on the strength found in the harvest from this water, and you rely completely on the depth and consistency provided by this enduring stone structure. You let your gaze rest on the deep, cool waters one last time before turning away, carrying not just a weight, but a quiet sense of belonging. The energy gathered here is peaceful, foundational, preparing you for the sustained effort that the coming hours will demand. The early hours have given way to the thick, comforting heat of midday. You find yourself back inside the low-ceilinged cottage, the simple space having absorbed the coolness of the morning air, and now radiating a gentle warmth. The scents that define this time are distinct. Wood smoke mixed with stale breadcrumbs, the faint, earthy musk of livestock kept nearby, and the clean scent of cooling sweat from your labor in the fields. You sit down onto a sturdy wooden bench near the central hearth, pulling your simple cloak tighter around your shoulders, as if against an unseen chill, or perhaps just to mark the boundary between yourself and the air. Looking up, you observe the beams of sunlight struggling through the small, high window opening. The light is bright now, unfiltered by cloud, making the dust motes floating in the shaft appear like slow, golden snowfall. This natural architecture, designed for simple survival rather than grand aesthetic appeal, reminds you of the limits and necessities of life here. There is no pretense to anything. Every material, every moment must serve a purpose. you settle into the quiet hum of the gathering. A few neighbors are already present in this shared space, moving with the unhurried grace that only comes from long familiarity with routine and self. They sit on similar benches or spread low mats upon the packed earth floor. You observe the careful movements of hands as they prepare for the meal, the peeling back of skins from root vegetables, the grinding motion of grain in a simple stone mortar, or the deliberate folding of coarse linen cloth. Each small action requires focus, a quiet mastery passed down through observation, never taught by grand decree, but shown simply over many years of shared life. The food itself is an exercise in sufficiency. There are hard rounds of bread, dark and dense from slow baking, thick, creamy porridge that has cooled slightly, perhaps some boiled cabbage or wild greens. You take a moment to look at the platter before you, considering its composition. Nothing here is luxurious or superfluous. Yet, in this simplicity lies a deep sustenance, a nourishing rhythm for both body and spirit. When you lift your bowl, the weight feels exactly right in your hands, comforting and predictable. The slight stickiness of the porridge on your fingers speaks to the simple grain used and the gentle heat that kept it liquid until moments ago. The soundscape is dominated by low tones, the scraping scrape of a wooden spoon against earthenware, the rhythmic chewing sounds from across the room, and the occasional soft sigh as someone adjusts their position. These noises are not meant to hold attention. They simply exist, forming the natural soundtrack to life, lived close to the necessities of existence. You slowly tear off a piece of bread, inspecting its crust for tiny fissures or cracks that might signal dryness. This small examination grounds you immediately in the present moment. You do not think about tomorrow's labor or yesterday's worry. Your focus is entirely on the texture under your fingertips, the subtle give and snap of the dried grain. As you begin to eat, the exchange begins quietly, a delicate process of communication that needs no grand announcement or dramatic gesture. It starts with noticing another person across the simple wooden table. You observe how their eyes meet yours for a fractional second, a silent acknowledgement of shared existence and mutual survival. This is not conversation in the modern sense. It is an exchange of being. A neighbor might pause, setting down their bowl, and merely offer you a small, knowing smile. That smile holds volumes, concern about the recent weather shift, quiet pride over a successful harvest, or perhaps just the simple pleasure of shared time. You receive this silent communication with a gentle nod, feeling the weight ease slightly from your shoulders. The conversation itself tends toward practicalities and observations of the natural world. Someone might point out how the wind carried a particularly sweet scent, the sharp tang of wild mint mixed with the dampness near the creek bed. Another may comment on the unexpected resilience of certain plants, how they manage to bloom in the shade cast by the cottage eaves, or clings stubbornly to life in dry soil. These observations are lessons disguised as casual talk. They remind you that the world around you is not merely a backdrop for your lives. It is an active participant in your daily existence. You drink from a wooden cup of watered ale, the liquid cool and faintly tart against your throat. The momentary coolness provides a deep contrast to the heat beginning to settle on the stone floor near your feet. You watch another person carefully wash their hands in a communal basin near the entrance. Notice the way the stream of water catches the dust particles stirred up from the earth, each particle illuminated, seemingly independent, yet part of the larger cloud. This simple task requires patience and care, mirroring the careful rhythm with which life is maintained here. The discussions drift slowly through memories of past seasons, not in dramatic storytelling, but in factual recital. Last year, the autumn was wet, so we stored more salt than usual. These are functional recollections that hold wisdom about resource management. They weave together the community's collective experience into a quiet tapestry of mutual understanding and shared fate. You reflect on the economy of words spoken here at midday. There is an immense wealth in what is unsaid. The long silences between contributions to the meal, the comfortable pause before answering a question. These moments are just as rich with meaning as any shouted declaration or vigorous debate could ever be. They speak volumes about acceptance and contentment. You feel the slow burn of the midday heat on your skin, a physical reminder that time moves steadily, indifferent to human schedules. Your body feels settled, heavy in the deep way only true rest after effort can make it. The gentle rhythm of eating, talking, and simply being together becomes a form of deep restoration. The greatest lesson here is not learned through dramatic teaching or intense physical challenge, but through sustained, unremarkable presence. You realize that resilience isn't something acquired in bursts of heroic action. It accumulates slowly, like the fine dust motes dancing in this shaft of light, always there, quietly present, marking the passage of ordinary time. The sufficiency found at this simple meal, surrounded by familiar faces, and the endless background noise of quiet life, offers a profound, undeniable form of wellness. It is the knowing that everything essential, food, shelter, company, and the slow, patient turning of the season is reliably present. Day after gentle day, the quiet rhythm of the fields has settled into a deep, steady hum within you. You have walked among rows of earth and grain already, feeling the familiar ache in your lower back that is more like a deep grounding than pain. Now, however, the work shifts away from the open stretch of farmland, moving toward the corner where lives are lived through skilled hands. A neighbor, or perhaps a traveling craftsman who has settled for the day, tends to some specialized task nearby. You draw closer, not because you need instruction, but simply because the sound of their practiced work draws your quiet attention. The sounds start as a measured rhythm, a gentle, predictable beat against the backdrop of field stillness, maybe the repetitive thudding of an axe splitting small pieces of seasoned oak, or perhaps the whirring click-clack of a heavy wooden loom. You watch their hands. They do not move by thought alone. They seem guided by muscle memory, by years of necessity and repetition. The movements are economical, graceful in their routine. If it is the axe, you observe how they test the wood first, allowing the impact to speak before driving the steel deeper into the grain, splitting the fiber cleanly rather than tearing it crudely. You notice the precise angle of the swing, the necessary pause between blows that lets the vibration settle through your arms. The smell of freshly split wood mixes with the faint scent of sweat and tanned leather from their belt, a rich, earthy mix unique to a place where work is constant and vital. Your focus settles into this rhythmic interplay of sound and motion. It becomes a form of quiet meditation for you. You realize that watching skilled hands at work is not merely observing, it is learning the grammar of effort. Every fold of wool, every tension in the thread, every chip falling from the blade tells a lesson about patience and precision. If they are weaving, you notice how they manipulate the shuttle. A quick flick, a precise tucking action that creates visible order out of seemingly chaotic strands. The loom itself seems an extension of their will, groaning gently with the sustained effort, creating patterns that are both complex and fundamentally simple. You sit down on a rough, low-slung stool, a place of quiet observation, and let the sounds wash over you. You trace the patterns in the packed dirt near your feet, watching tiny grains settle and accumulate like spilled earth stars. The sun here is warmer than it was in the fields, having climbed higher into the clear autumn sky. It illuminates motes of dust floating lazily in the air between you and the craftsman. This natural light seems to reveal every minute detail: the roughness on their calloused knuckles, the wear pattern on the wooden stool they sit upon, the way the bark peels from a nearby oak tree like old parchment. The learning process is not about mimicry. It begins with deep, slow appreciation. You are absorbing the understanding that there is no room for waste in their work, whether it is thread or swing. Every motion must serve the end product, and every detail contributes to the overall strength of the fabric or the stability of the split wood. This necessity shapes a discipline within them that seems almost spiritual. As they pause occasionally, perhaps wiping a bead of sweat from their brow or adjusting the tension on a beam, you find yourself thinking about the rhythm of your own life. Your own labors in the fields, while essential, are expansive and cyclical, tied to sun and soil. But this close, specialized work, contained within the space of a corner, is focused, intensive, and incredibly detailed. It teaches a different kind of time management, not just working with time, but managing every single fraction of it. You wonder how long such skills take to master. Is it merely years, or does it require generations? You consider the weight of that accumulated knowledge, passed down not through scrolls, but through demonstration and careful observation. It is a living library housed in calloused hands. The sounds shift slightly as the afternoon deepens. Perhaps the craftsman switches techniques, moving from splitting wood to scraping tinder, or slowing their loom work to repair a section of warp thread that has snapped under tension. The change requires you to adjust your attention, following the new cadence, a quick scrape here, a gentle pull there. You notice how they handle tools as if they were extensions of their own bones. They feel perfectly weighted, familiar in their balance. This familiarity is another lesson. Every artisan develops an intimate relationship with their equipment. You find yourself imagining your hands performing these actions. Not the sweeping motions of plowing a field, but the small, controlled movements of scraping or weaving. You feel the imaginative weight of the loom shuttle passing through your imagined fingers. The muscles in your forearm must remember this feeling, recalling the delicate tension needed to maintain consistency and strength. It is not about becoming another craftsman. It is about internalizing a different kind of patience, the patient stillness required for focused creation. You watch how their concentration narrows their world down entirely. Their breath deepens slightly. Their gaze becomes fixed on the immediate task, blocking out the surrounding sounds of village life, even the faint buzz of flies or the distant bleating of sheep. This selective focus is itself a valuable skill, a quiet sanctuary for the mind in an otherwise bustling existence. The air changes as the afternoon wears into evening, and the intense quality of the sunlight begins to mellow, draining from sharp gold to a softer ochre. The craftsman slows their pace considerably. They do not finish today's work completely. Instead, they appear to be refining it, smoothing out the rough edges of the day's effort. You rise slowly from your stool, stretching your legs and shaking out the residual stiffness from hours of watching. A gentle tiredness settles over you, a pleasant exhaustion that comes from sustained, careful attention. Before leaving, you linger for a moment, taking one last look at their hands resting near the finished piece. They are marked by their work, the landscape of repetitive effort etched into skin and sinew. You carry away not just an image, but a quiet understanding that every form of labor, whether it is shaping a field or weaving a pattern, requires deep respect for the material, and most profoundly, deep respect for the focused mind that directs it. The day's lesson in motion concludes, leaving you with the gentle resonance of measured work against the gathering calm before twilight. The last direct light of the day is beginning to withdraw, pulling itself down past the tree line and over the western slope. You feel this change first in a gentle coolness that creeps up from the ground, seeping into your bones even through layers of woven wool. It is not the sharp cold of morning, but a deep, settling chill, the sort of air that suggests time slowing down to a hush. The communal area where you gathered tonight was hard-packed earth, now cooling quickly, taking on the muted shades of slate and deep brown. You settle onto the low bench built against the main wall of the longhouse. Your movement is slow, deliberately unhurried, mirroring the way the last stray beams of light seem to stretch out until they vanish entirely. You notice how the smoke from every chimney in the immediate area has coalesced into a single, drifting layer across the twilight sky. It hangs there, smelling faintly of burnt wood and domestic life, a collective exhalation that signifies that work is done for the day. The scents are subtle, damp wool mixed with embers, the faint, sweet tang of drying herbs hanging from rafters nearby, and the woody ghost smell of consumed fuel. You sit quietly for a time, simply breathing in this composite scent of evening survival. Around you, the immediate circle is gathering into a pool of warm, flickering light cast by the central hearth. The fire itself is an organism. It breathes steadily, consuming fallen branches and scraps of kindling with predictable patience. You watch the way the flames dance, not wildly, but rhythmically, licking at the stones they rest upon. This steady glow anchors the space, turning what might have been a simple gathering spot into something feeling ancient and protected. The warmth radiating from the hearth is a tangible force wrapping around you like a thick blanket woven of heat and comfort. It forces your muscles to relax, allowing the careful tension held in your shoulders since dawn's first light to finally ease away. You shift slightly on the bench, noting how the wood has absorbed the coolness already, offering only moderate resistance to your weight. You look at the faces gathered nearby. They are etched with the quiet fatigue of a day spent performing necessary labors, the turning of soil, the drawing of water, the simple act of preparing enough food for the night. Yet, beneath that tiredness, there is something else, a deep, shared calm, the kind that comes from knowing that for tonight, everything essential has been met. As the shadows lengthen and deepen into blue-gray stains across the packed earth floor, the first stories begin to emerge. They do not start with dramatic pronouncements or exciting conquests, but with gentle memories, a tale of how the rye grew especially tall this year, or a recollection of a harvest many years past when the rains were perfect. The storytelling here is more about weaving shared history than providing entertainment. You sit and let the collective voice wash over you. You notice how the stories are punctuated by the sounds of the fire, a small crackle as a piece of oak splits, the gentle hiss when steam rises from a nearby cooking pot. These natural noises become part of the narrative rhythm itself, filling the gaps between words. Some neighbors begin to recount lessons passed down through generations, not merely as anecdotes, but as instructions for living, a reminder on how best to treat the spring thaw. or the specific time of day when certain berries are at their peak. You listen with an open attention, realizing that these seemingly simple stories contain profound survival knowledge, distilled over centuries into oral tradition. It is a practical education, wrapped in narrative comfort. Your thoughts drift back to the fields you walked earlier, the satisfying resistance of the loamy earth under your fingertips. That feeling of deep physical connection remains. You realize that the labor performed by body and hand gives context to the stories being told now, the need for the careful tending described, or the appreciation for a good yield mentioned in passing. The firelight plays across the simple wooden objects clustered nearby. A carved bone implement, smooth from continuous handling. A piece of rough woven cloth used for binding bundles. These objects are silent witnesses to the continuity of life. They possess a deep patina, bearing the marks of countless hands and many cycles of seasons, much like your own bones. Sometimes, when the story takes a pause, you simply watch the smoke drifting upwards, watching it dissolve into the deepening blue. You wonder about the vastness above the things that exist beyond the low roofline, beyond the neat rows of cultivated field. Yet, in this moment, within the circle of firelight and shared breath, the external world seems unimportant. The importance settles instead on the immediate reality. The solid wood under your hand, the steady heat blooming against your cheek, the gentle murmur of voices recounting what it means to endure another day. There is a profound satisfaction in this enclosed rhythm. It is not merely rest, it is integration. The mind and body are slowing down together, settling into the predictable peace that comes only from dependable routine. You remember the physical ache in your muscles, a pleasant complaint that signals use and purpose rather than neglect or injury. This ache validates the day's passage. It is a gentle reminder of how entirely embodied you are in this moment, tethered to the rhythm of muscle contraction, breath inhalation, and the simple need for rest. As the stories begin to taper off, replaced by soft humming and sighs of contented exhaustion, the firelight seems to soften, shifting from an active glow to a mellow amber. You find yourself drifting into a state of quiet alertness, your awareness cushioned by the accumulated warmth and the gentle echo of voices. The collective memory shared in these whispers is more sustaining than any meal. It affirms that you belong, that your life has meaning within this continuous circle of human experience. You settle deeper onto the bench, allowing the deep, rhythmic pulse of the sleeping village to slowly begin its steady call, a calm invitation towards necessary repose. This quiet evening smoke and shared light settles over you like the deepest sleep, preparing you gently for the return of the silent dawn. The day has settled into a deep, peaceful hush. The warmth that settled around the communal hearth fades slowly, leaving behind only a faint, lingering smell of ash and spent oak. You stand up quietly from your spot near the fire, feeling the cool kiss of the evening air against your bare feet, a noticeable shift from the radiating heat you had been accustomed to. You do not rush this transition. Instead, you allow yourself a moment simply standing, absorbing the subtle change in the ambient temperature, recognizing that the day's contained energy is dissipating into the vastness of the coming night. The air feels different now, thicker perhaps, or simply deeper, carrying with it the weight of elapsed hours and the promise of deep rest. Stepping out from the shelter of the cottage, you begin a slow perimeter walk through the village. This is not a journey toward a specific goal, but rather an appreciative wander, allowing your awareness to settle into the rhythms of the place. The light that filters down from the darkening sky is not a solid color, but a wash of bruised purples and deep indigos, giving definition only in whispers. It seems as if the world has muted its palette for the hour. You walk along the beaten dirt path that snakes between the small cluster of homes. Every detail that was merely visible under the harsh light of noon is now coaxed into sharp relief by the gentle contrast of twilight. You notice how the shadows are changing, stretching long and attenuated from the low-hanging setting sun, even though the actual star brilliance has not yet appeared. These shadows do not belong solely to objects. They seem to stretch and curve across the cobbled paths themselves, giving them a flowing quality. Your attention drops lower, catching on the textures beneath your feet. The grit of dust mixed with fine earth particles under the heel, a familiar mix that speaks of generations of footsteps. You feel the occasional unevenness in the paving stones, the subtle tilt where time and rain have worked their patient art. Underfoot, the ground remains steadfastly reliable, a foundation upon which life continues its slow, predictable dance. You pause near the cluster of larger homes, taking in the varied smoke plumes drifting lazily upward. These plumes are unlike those from the morning's bustle. They are calmer, more resigned. Some drift straight and steady, suggesting banked fires, or perhaps just a single small cooking pot cooling down. Others curl slightly, caught by faint, cool drafts rising from unseen ditches. You wonder about the rhythm of smoke itself, how it rises to carry away the day's smells, leaving only clean wood smoke sent in its wake. The smellscape of the village at dusk is remarkably complex. It is a blend that seems contradictory. There is the faint, sweet sharpness of night-blooming herbs carried on the breeze, the grounding, smoky aroma of cooling embers, and beneath it all, the metallic tang of damp earth meeting cool air. These smells are markers of life, continuing even as visibility diminishes. You turn your gaze upward slightly, observing the eaves and roofing tiles. They collect the deepening twilight like dark velvet. You note how different materials absorb the remaining light in distinct ways. The rough, porous texture of whitewashed plaster seems to hold the dwindling glow differently than the tightly packed shingles of a neighboring cottage. The village at this hour feels wrapped up in a collective, quiet breathing pattern. It is a breath that has been exhaling all day's activity and is now settling into a deep, restorative pause. The sounds are equally instructive. They are not sudden or sharp. They are soft, auditory whispers. You hear the occasional muffled thump, perhaps from livestock moving within an enclosure, or perhaps just something small falling onto packed earth. There is the very distinct sound of movement in the distance, the faint, rhythmic clatter of a wagon wheel on stone, slowing down as it approaches some unseen destination. This repetitive sound acts like a lullaby, emphasizing the cyclical nature of effort and return. It speaks to daily continuity, a pattern that has endured for centuries. You move slowly toward the edge of the cultivated plots, where the fields meet the wilder edges of the village perimeter. Here, the boundary is marked by stone walls or low hedges of thorny bramble. The cool air brushes against your skin here, carrying the earthy, sweeter scent of decaying vegetation, the smell of things completing their cycle. You bend down slightly, observing a patch of moss growing between two stones. It retains a darker green in the deepening gloom, catching the last vestiges of scattered light. Its persistence is quiet, dependable, utterly indifferent to human timekeeping. This slow walk encourages an inward turn. As you observe these external signs, the settled smoke, the creeping shadows, the cooling temperature, you find your own internal rhythm slowing down in mirroring synchrony. The day's need for constant motion and immediate output fades into a gentle suggestion of rest. Your muscles relax with each deliberate step. Your breath deepens slightly as your thoughts quiet. You continue walking until you reach the central gathering area near the main communal paths. Here, people are moving in smaller clusters now. Some are heading indoors, drawn by the promise of warmth and simple sustenance for the night. Others are still pausing outside, perhaps simply enjoying the final moments of relative openness before being fully enclosed by the darkness. You observe a couple sitting on a low stone bench. They are not speaking loudly. Their companionship is maintained by soft gestures, the passing of a hand, a quiet tilt of the head toward one another. Their presence embodies a profound stability, the kind that comes from years of shared, predictable routine and mutual reliance. It is an effortless state of being that seems far richer than any loud celebration. The darkness does not fall all at once. It accrues gradually, layer by invisible layer. First, the purple recedes into slate gray, then the soft light of the moon or distant artificial flames begins to compete with the sky's deepening indigo. You watch how that transition affects people, how shoulders settle deeper into repose, how conversations become more intimate and softer in tone. It is a deeply elemental experience this slow descent from day to night. It reminds you that life itself adheres to these enormous, dependable cycles. Light yielding to dark, warmth receding to cool, activity giving way to stillness. This predictability, viewed through the lens of an entire lifetime lived within it, ceases to feel like constraint and begins instead to feel like a deep, nurturing assurance. Your awareness shifts from external observation to an internal acknowledgement of belonging. You belong to this rhythm. You are woven into the pattern set by these paths, these shared structures, and the very cycle of the smoke rising into the cooling air. The weight that used to rest on your shoulders during the day's toil feels lighter now, replaced by a comfortable weariness. The satisfying exhaustion of a body that has moved exactly as it was meant to move. You finally turn back toward the light emanating from your own dwelling. The quiet journey through the village at dusk is not merely about observing architecture or smoke. It is a slow immersion into the collective, unwavering commitment of simple existence. You carry the deepening indigo tones of the sky and the enduring rhythm of those shadowed paths with you, letting them settle into the core of your being, preparing for the deep calm that awaits inside the walls. The indigo light lingers around the edges of everything, clinging to the curve of the eaves and softening the harsh angles of the stone wall. You walk slowly, letting the deeper cool of the encroaching night settle upon your shoulders. The scents that permeate this late hour are different from those of early dawn or midday sweat. They are cooler, earthier. There is the deep, mineral tang of wet soil mixed with the fading scent of day's wood smoke, a composite smell that smells entirely like rest. You notice the gradual diminishing of sound. The calls of the merchant wagon have long since passed, and the distant clucking of penned poultry has quieted to soft, intermittent sounds. Instead, there is a subtle background symphony, the chirping chorus of crickets starting their steady rhythm, the occasional faint rustle in the dry thatch of nearby roofs, or the muted patter of moisture condensing on roof slate. Your senses slowly recalibrate from the vibrancy of the days, work to this encompassing quiet. You turn your attention inward, cataloging not a list of fatigue, but the settling feeling of deep calm that follows necessary labor. Every muscle in your legs feels weighted with the day's memory, the pulling of the plowshare, the carrying weight of water, the squatting for extended hours in the fields. But this weariness is not a burden. It is simply proof of existence, proof of having kept pace with the predictable turning wheel of life. You move back towards your dwelling, stepping over the threshold stones that mark the boundary between the shared village path and the contained, private space of sleep. Inside, the air remains cool despite the day's heat, carrying a deeper promise of stillness. The first ritual begins with shedding the outer layers of the working world. You gently slide off your sturdy leather boots. The sensation of bare heel touching the packed earth floor is surprisingly grounding, connecting you instantly to the material reality beneath your weight. Next comes the coattails of rough-spun wool and linen, garments that have been lived into a comfortable state of familiarity. As you fold them over the wooden bench or hook them onto the peg near the hearth, you feel the subtle release of all the day's tension, the physical act mimicking an emotional unwinding. You notice the dust clinging to the hemline, specks of dark loam mixed with fine grit, small tokens of every patch of ground walked and every plant touched during your labors. Inside the small room, every object has earned its place, and you move through them with practiced economy. Your hands naturally drift toward the corner where the bedding is stored, a simple mattress resting on a straw pallet, covered by heavy woven wool blankets. You lift one edge of the woolen coverlet, pulling it back carefully to check for any dampness or stray remnants from the day before. The texture of the raw wool against your fingertips feels coarse and honest. This small act of preparation, checking the comfort of your immediate sleeping space, is more than just maintenance. It is a physical commitment to rest. You smooth out the straw beneath, straightening the wrinkles in the woolen covers until the surface appears as undisturbed and quiet as the deepest part of the night sky outside. The routine shifts now to small details, preparing the implements for the next cycle. Perhaps you check the woven grass mat used for sitting, smoothing out any creases, or gathering stray bits of straw that have slipped through the weave. You gather a smooth river stone near the hearth, a simple object picked up perhaps months ago by chance, and turn it over in your palm. It is cool to the touch, heavier than its size suggests, and perfectly smoothed by constant water movement. Its weight feels reassuring, a small piece of enduring nature that has witnessed countless cycles just like this one. You move towards the small basin set near the sleeping area, cupping your hands slightly. The water in it is cool, clean, and tastes faintly of smoke residue mixed with cold mountain runoff. You use a scrap of damp cloth to wipe away the pervasive film of dust from the wooden surfaces, the edge of the rough-hewn table, the basin itself, the door latch. Each swipe is deliberate, an act of cleansing that mirrors the mental cleaning required at the end of a long day. It is not just about removing dirt. It is about preparing the physical shell and surroundings for complete repose. Once these small chores are completed, you find yourself standing in the center of your quiet room. You take a moment simply to listen. The sounds have narrowed dramatically. The roaring river of the day's activity has been reduced to a gentle background hum. You hear the almost imperceptible creaking of the timbers within the walls as they cool further. The distant, repetitive drip-drip sound of moisture dripping from the eaves onto the earth below. These are the sounds of settling architecture, of enduring material substance that has supported life for generations. You breathe slowly, consciously matching your intake and outflow to the rhythm of the steady creaking wood, allowing the breathing process itself to become a stabilizing force, the slow cycle of inhalation, drawing in the cool, still air, the measured exhalation, releasing the accumulated tension. This simple body function becomes an anchor against the overwhelming silence. It is a meditation taught by necessity. Your thoughts drift back over the day's passages, the satisfying ache in your forearms from mending the tools, the way the sun felt strongest when it struck the wheat stalks, the quiet exchange of smiles with neighbor Alara at the communal well. These memories are not weighed down by regret or worry. They are simply stored, filed away as necessary substance, like grains measured for tomorrow's meal. The understanding settles deeply. The true luxury is not an abundance of goods, but the predictability and dependable harmony of life itself. You understand that every small ritual, the smoothing of straw, the wiping of a wooden surface, the quiet settling of bedding, is a tribute paid to the coming sleep, and in turn a respectful preparation for the energy renewal needed for the next dawn's labor. There is an inherent dignity in this simplicity, a deep peace found in accepting what passes without resistance. You finally approach the pallet where you will rest your head. You lie down slowly, letting your body settle fully onto the straw and wool. The material feels structured, yet giving, supportive, but humble. Before closing your eyes completely, you lift your hand and lightly trace the pattern of the simple woolen blanket over your thigh. Its weave is uneven, bearing marks from previous owners and generations of use, a testament to resilience. You feel the cool air brushing against your exposed skin, contrasting with the gradual trapped warmth beneath the blankets. You let your gaze soften, allowing the edges of vision to blur into the encompassing darkness, punctuated only by scattered stars peeking through small gaps in the roof thatch. The cosmic distance seems very close, visible just beyond the immediate comfort of your walls. You realize that being prepared for sleep is not merely ceasing activity. It is a deep act of connection, a physical yielding back to the reliable cycle of night, allowing yourself to be suspended between the tireless toil of the earth and the inevitable promise of the rising sun. The rhythmic sounds fade completely, replaced by an oceanic quietude, until only your steady, calming breath remains, ready to carry you through the long passage into rest. The final breath of the day is a slow, deep exhalation, carrying with it the mingled scents of damp thatch and wood smoke. You lie upon your back, settled on a woven mat outside the shelter of the cottage wall, allowing the cool night air to draw away the lingering heat of your body. The coolness begins at your feet, climbing slowly up your ankles, reminding you that the earth itself is exhaling its own quiet chill into the deepening hours. The first thing you truly notice is not the cold, but the sheer depth of the silence. It is a different kind of silence than the one experienced indoors, a muffled, cushioned absence of man's usual sounds. Out here, the sounds are vast and open, You hear the faint, rhythmic chirp of unseen insects working in the grass, stalks near your feet, or perhaps the occasional low whirring call of an owl hunting over a distant copse of trees. These noises are steady, constant, lending structure to the profound emptiness. You lift your gaze upward, and the scale shifts instantly. All the small concerns, the soil that needs turning tomorrow, the basket that must be mended, the ache in your lower back from today's labor recede slightly, becoming manageable details rather than pressing worries. Above you stretches an immense vault of night sky, unmarred by the constant glow of distant, industrialized cities. It is a dome of velvet blackness, dusted with impossible brightness. You realize how much light we take for granted. Here, every star seems close enough to touch, each one a pinpoint source of unimaginable distance and steady energy. The Milky Way arches overhead, not as a hazy smudge, but as a discernible river, thick with the gleam of countless forgotten suns. It moves with a quiet permanence that feels utterly unconnected to the quick turning of human life below. Your mind begins its own drift, matching the slow, steady rotation of the visible heavens. You track constellations that your grandmother used to point out, patterns forming familiar beasts or stories in the celestial tapestry. There is no urgency in looking up. The stars do not rush. They simply are, having been shining for ages, and continuing to shine long after you will have forgotten them. You recall how time worked in a life bound to the seasons. Time was measured by planting cycles, by the swelling of grain heads, by the movement of the sun across the zenith. It was dependable, predictable, rooted in loam. But looking at this sky, you feel another measurement, a kind of cosmic pulse. This is universal time, indifferent to your daily rhythm, but constantly encompassing it. The temperature shift becomes more noticeable now. The air retains a crisp quality, scented with the sharp sweetness of night-blooming herbs, and the fainter musk of grazing animals settling in for the night. You flex your toes slightly inside their worn leather coverings, noticing how the coolness permeates even through the thick material. This small physical sensation grounds you back to the immediacy of your body and your small patch of earth. The silence encourages a deep internal observation. You listen not just with your ears, but deeper within your chest. You notice the steady rhythm of your own breathing, a slow, deliberate inhale that gathers the coolness into your lungs, followed by an equal and measured exhale that releases any tension held in the day's exertions. It is a profound lesson in scale. Your life, centered on the small strip of land and the seasonal needs of the community, feels wonderfully vital against the backdrop of this eternal void. Yet, you are not dwarfed by it, rather, you are encompassed by it. You become another thread woven into the massive tapestry that stretches from the farthest star to the roots of your nearby oak tree. The passage of time in this setting seems elastic. Yesterday's efforts and tomorrow's labor blend seamlessly with the brilliant indifference above. The need to work remains, but the frantic edge of striving softens into quiet acceptance. You are simply present, breathing, resting, observing the incredible geometry of light across limitless space. You contemplate the sheer constancy of things. The earth spins whether or not a man is there to plow it. The sun will rise whether or not you awake. The stars endure through countless cycles of human history that you will never witness. This immense rhythm provides an extraordinary kind of calm assurance. It softens the worry about small failures, a bad harvest, a passing illness, because something far larger, more enduring, is always at work. The moonlight, when it filters through patches of cloud, catches the edges of your tunic and skin, lending everything a silvery glow that feels ancient and gentle. The smells of the night intensify. The smoky sweetness from the nearby hearth, mingled with the fresh, clean scent of dew settling on uncut grass. These scents are reliable anchors in the wild wash of cosmic immensity. Eventually, the restlessness of conscious thought begins to wane. Your muscles grow heavy beneath you, comforted by the unwavering chill of the surrounding air. The rhythm of your breathing slows further, matching the deeper, more expansive cadence of the quiet night itself. You focus only on that gentle ebb and flow, the slow intake, the long release, allowing your attention to drift from the dazzling distance above back down to the solid, dependable earth beneath you. The great cycle is drawing you downward now, toward sleep, which itself is just another kind of temporary void, a quiet pause before the brilliant return of light. You settle into that welcomed nothingness, trusting entirely in the predictable, comforting rhythm that has governed your life since the first breath. The night yielding to the dawn, and the earth holding vigil beneath the endless, steady watch of the stars. The village sleeps around you, a warm knot of humanity held